Hey, team players, and welcome back. We might be in the heart of NFL lying season as people are preparing for the NFL draft. You are seeing more misinformation left, right, and center going everywhere. We are going to be navigating all this in a live PPR, half PPR draft because today we're going to be on underdogs, and this is going to be amazing. Yes, indeedy. It is lying season like crazy out there, guys. And this is like, how do we really want to weigh everything in there? What teams, what people are looking in what directions, and what is the outcomes to actually expect given the situation of the buildup of the league? Because we've discussed this many times. When you're going to build a championship performance, regardless of your position, it comes down to, and right now is all of the fights back and forth of who's going to get what opportunity, where are they going to be at, and what is this thing going to look like. So that is what today's show is all about. Make sure you guys send your questions in. We're always here to answer questions, whether they be dynasty, best balls, or whatever. Misspoke here in the beginning. We're not going to be doing this one on Underdog because for some reason they aren't saying that I live in America. So we're going to deal with that. We're going to be back on DraftKings. One of the things that Bob and I discussed was for those who are watching live, if you want to jump in with us, we're totally cool with that. We're going to be doing the $1 million training camp with the $10 buy-in on DraftKings. We're going to be starting that up right now. And feel free to jump in, chat with us, let your team, because just like any other live draft you're doing, whether it be with your friends in your home league or across the internet, when you're with other people making the picks, it is an incredibly fun and bonding experience. So we share that with everyone here. There are 8 open spots for this one if you want to jump in and do it with us. So Bob will be here in a minute, getting all the breakdown here. One of the guys that I believe it was Resop told us about earlier in the process, he was really intrigued by it, was Thornton. He's a guy I wanted to talk about here. Thornton has really started to fly up some boards. And the reason for that is first off, the guy is huge and he's fast, but people are sort of really breaking down his percentage of his catch percentage. And what we're seeing here is that he's actually better than his numbers indicate, and it's starting to get live around the room. So what used to be projected as a late mid day 4 guy, somewhere in the 6th, 7th round, could be as early as the late 3rd round. And you're picking up a guy with that kind of skill set in Thornton in the 3rd round. He's a rookie that is actually intriguing to me late in the draft. Certainly not someone to build a team around, but as an 8 or 9 receiver on the roster. And the other guy that's doing that is Williams. Williams has really started popping off to me here as we're diving more and more into this draft process. So, guys, if you want to be with us here, we are going to be on the $1 million DraftKings one here, $10 entry. Family, it's not just me. You are getting Bob here jumping in here as well in a hot minute. Feel free to jump into the draft as well, family. There's 6 open slots. We'll make this thing kick off here a little faster. But again, we're on DraftKings, the $1 million training camp early bird tournament, where you're going to talk about all these fun guys. And, you guys have heard me go off a lot about the running back hole that I think people are really overspending on in the 3rd and 4th rounds across the league. And I think that's a major problem. But one of the things that we talked about doing here was trying to do a build with a quarterback early. And being on DraftKings here, Bob, I'm really hoping that we get about that 8th pick or so, maybe a little bit lighter, where we get a stud running back, get Henry, and then get Lamar and see what we can do from there.
Yeah, I mean, depending on where you're going with here, if you're on Underdog, like we said the other day, Underdog, it's a little bit easier to build a high-profile quarterback early. I'm noticing a little bit of that too at times on DraftKings, depending on the room you're in. Usually speaking, family, like if you're on Underdog, it is pretty easy to confidently build a Josh Allen team, a Jalen Hurts team, and a Lamar team. And you'll have a decent combination. You could have 2 high-profile wide receivers, 2 high-profile running backs potentially. I'm thinking that what we're going to do here is that if we're talking strategy before we draft, I'm thinking that it is possible, especially on DraftKings, and depending on how the market goes, that we could definitely get in the 16th round. You're looking at a combination of, your Jackson, 16th round or later, your Jackson Darts, your Shadours, your Russell Wilsons, your Anthony Richardsons, your Sam Darnolds at times as well, depending on the makeup. So I'm keeping all those quarterbacks in mind when I'm selecting also some of my early stacks that I'm thinking about. So, for example, if I'm going to be looking at Lamar or Josh Allen early, I'm also going to be thinking about, okay, well, maybe I'm building a JSN in there if I'm going to go Sam Darnold a little bit late. I'm going to keep my options opening for stacking both of the quarterbacks that I do select. Now, here's the other thing is that I know Joe isn't confident in this type of strategy, but I'm going to say it flat out right now that if we go with a high profile quarterback, I only want 2.
Which are they?
And I know that can get a little bit frisky for some people, but if I'm investing a high profile capital in a onesie position like quarterback, I'm only going to invest most likely in 2 at any one point in time, depending on the quarterback.
You mean 2 quarterbacks on the roster overall, or 2 of the top tier?
2 overall. 2 overall.
Well, I mean, we put Lamar on this roster. If Lamar ain't starting, we're in trouble anyway. So I'm fine with that. So do you want to? So let's try to walk this out then. If we're planning on doing Lamar in the 3rd, we can do Wilson late, make the first round pick Neighbors, have 2 building stacks, and let's do this.
So this is on DraftKings, and what I've noticed about DraftKings is that Lamar and Josh Allen go higher than on Underdog. So typically speaking on Underdog, Lamar is going in the 4th.
Don't you?
Here, there's a good chance that Lamar won't make it back to the 3rd round.
You don't think he'll make it to 310? I'm
just saying that it's going to be tough if he doesn't. So if you're building this in thinking about, will I get Lamar or not, he can drop in DraftKings, but typically speaking, he does get taken before that 310 pick, from what I've seen. But the market has been changing.
So, I still would like to roll the dice on it because if we do, how about this way? Regardless of it's Lamar or not, we can do a high-end quarterback at 310 and still do Neighbors, knowing we're going to do Wilson super late, honoring the 16th or later. Wilson is 16th. I know that. So we can do Wilson super late. We can do a stud at 310. Maybe it's not Lamar. Hopefully it is. But even if it's not, and then we'll at 2-3 doesn't have to be bound to King Henry anymore. It could be, but it's not bound to King Henry. Are you good with Neighbors at 110?
Yeah, if he's there, absolutely. If he's there, I think also 4-3 opens you up to Jalen Hurts as well. I know with the tush push, people are thinking that maybe that's not such an elitish option anymore, but he can throw the ball. We'll see how that goes. He's in a stellar offense, so I think at the 4-3, keeping that in mind, maybe you push Neighbors AJ Brown early, and if you don't get Lamar, you have a backup plan with Hurts. Typically speaking, that could be a decent way to go as well if this is the build you kind of want to go. If you're just walking in right now, guys, we're doing just a strategy show talking about a build that you can make where you're only taking 2 quarterbacks. You're taking a quarterback early. We're talking about in the first 4 rounds here, and then your next quarterback isn't coming until round 16 or later.
The last 4 rounds.
So you're not investing a lot of picks, but you are investing a good amount of capital in your first quarterback. But what we know is that these high profile quarterbacks, in the top 4 or so, will be significantly, could be significantly higher scoring than anybody who's below them.
So right now, in my opinion, the ideal start is Neighbors and Genty. If we can make that happen, that would be beautiful. Now that Henry's off the board.
Well, I would say, I would actually say it would be Neighbors and AJ Brown. That would be my ideal start.
I'm cool with that too.
We want to go Jalen Hurts if Lamar gets taken off the board. Because as we've established before, AJ Brown does get the primary amount of targets from Jalen Hurts when Jalen Hurts is primarily passing the ball. His target share was upwards of like 25% in games where Jalen Hurts, in all games where Jalen Hurts was throwing the ball. So if he's getting 25% of 18 passes versus 25% of 30 passes, obviously it's going to change a bit. And at our draft position, we're not going to get Devonta Smith on the comeback if we end up with Jalen Hurts. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind as well, for consideration, which then puts us in a little bit of hole at running back. But if
we're still getting the great Ohio State ones, which I'm good with.
We're going to try to build in some of those rookies. So when you bake in an early quarterback, you are going to primarily be building in some of those rookies. So just keep that in mind as well. Yeah.
All right. So the other advantage of taking AJ is that if you get Hurts, you get the stack. And Hurts is certainly one of the studs.
But if you don't, he's still a credible threat to be a 20-plus point scorer when playing really well.
Oh, yeah, he can be a standalone. Yeah, no doubt about that. I'm good with that.
And I absolutely agree with you. When it comes to handcuffing here, family, typically speaking, I'm not handcuffing a quarterback, but in deep dynasty superflex sleepers, I could see a reasonable argument that, if you have Josh Allen, you might also want to invest time in Trubisky. If you have Hurts, you might want to invest time in the backup. If you have Burrow, Jake Browning would be absolutely a guy in a deep super flex. If I have the positional, if I'm in the position to do that, then I would do something like that.
So Bob, for us communication, we're getting a lot of lag in this one. So we're going to need to really be ahead of it.
Say that again.
So we're getting a lot of lag in this one. We really need to be ahead of it.
Yeah, I'm noticing that the clock isn't even going.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it looks like we're going to be able to get Hurts just from his current ADP is 43. That 4-3 pick is number 39.
I agree with that, family. So looking around the league,
I think that we'll have a chance here to pick up Hurts at 4-3.
Yeah. Looking around the league, when you look at things around the league, what you see is the fact that these guys are so elite that most teams aren't investing capital in making the backup be like anything more than a placeholder for camp or for practice. And so when you think about the fantasy assets, if Jalen Hurts were to go down, you're not going to see anything great from, the pass catchers. If Allen goes down, the pass catchers are going to suffer. If Mahomes goes down, maybe there's not as much suffrage there. But Lamar's play style is so different. Allen's is so different. Hurts is so different that you could definitely see a decrease. Now with Burrow and Mahomes, it comes to the point where, you're saying, all right, Burrow, Mahomes, both of them pocket passers. They can move around a little bit, but they're elite pocket passers. And so obviously you're not going to be able to mirror that production at all. I love Fitzmagic. I love Fitzmagic. See what I said about Lamar? And you're probably going to see Jayden Daniels come off the board relatively quickly as well. Once Josh Allen goes, like yesterday, I was doing a $10 one where Josh Allen went in the third round, and I was able to build Jefferson and I believe Jefferson and Bucky. That was a good start. I really like that. T. Higgins is continuing to crawl up the board, Joe. He's one of those guys that I really, really like moving forward here when it comes to where he could be. Because when you look at his fantasy points per game when he's playing, he's in the top echelon of wide receivers. And a lot of times, if that guy wouldn't have went Josh Allen there and would have went like T and somebody else, he'd been probably enjoying that team. This is a good team too.
So, Bob, for this upcoming pick, I'm looking at either Adams or Wilson, Devontae Adams or Garrett Wilson, with a lean towards Adams.
Well, knowing that the two quarterbacks came off the board here, I'm really looking to see where Jayden Daniels is going. Because if Jayden Daniels goes, I would maybe want to put this third round pick on Jalen. If Jayden Daniels doesn't go before this pick, we'll have to see. If Jayden Daniels goes, then we want Hurts. If
I
Jaden
got
Daniels,
that.
if Jaden Daniels is still on the board, then we can take whoever we want here.
So, what would you rather, Adams or Garrett Wilson?
I'd rather Adams.
Okay, I'm the same way. So that's just the clarifier here. See what this pick is? The pick is Garrett Wilson, so Adams is our selection. And then Hurts is the next pick come around.
Yeah, because I don't think that either of these guys will take Jaden, or either of these guys would take Hurts. Jaden maybe. Jaden maybe.
Yeah, they might take Jaden here. Either way, just as interesting.
Yeah, my butthole is puckered there, family. The butthole
Hurts
is puckered.
has fallen to the number 5 quarterback in terms of listing. Burrow has jumped him. And that was not the case.
That's not always what comes out, though. That's not always what
comes out. I get it. But the point is, we're seeing a transition where Burrow's starting to climb and Jalen's starting to fall.
Well, what I find to be unique is that the two guys that drafted, which this doesn't happen, the two guys that drafted the Bengals wide receivers already drafted a high-profile quarterback. So they're not going to take Joe Burrow. So that's going to be a super unique build. That's going to be a super unique build for when this gets time for playoffs, right? Is that Lamar and Josh Allen in this league are not tied, or are tied to two of the better wide receivers, but Joe Burrow isn't. So that's going to be a little bit of an interesting kind of wrinkle to this league. Also, Jaden Daniels hasn't gone yet. Will he go here? There he goes.
Goes right there. Hurts. We take Hurts immediately after him.
Boy, family. It was puckered, and it was puckered so delightfully.
But now we have said, though,
tremendous start.
This is not a bad start.
Tremendous start.
Yeah.
You couldn't ask for a perfect start.
If we get both the Ohio State running backs, this is one of the best starts you can ask for.
Mm-hmm. And then you're coming down. Keep that there so we can still see the first couple of rounds here. The Derrick Henry Breece Hall build is kind of a little bit fragile to me. I'm not sure about Tyreek Hill's situation. I would rather him as a wide receiver 2-3 kind of scenario. I wouldn't really take him as my number 1 there. That Jahmyr Gibbs build is looking kind of interesting. I really think that Ladd climbed in this draft. I think that's a really interesting pick. The Kyron Hampton with CD, I think is nice. JSN and JMO with JT and B-Rob.
You can't convince me that Kyron's not a wasted pick at this point. To me, Kyron has too much risk going into this session.
I can. You just won't believe me.
Well, I like seeing Hampton jump ahead of Mixon and Kamara. I like that.
Yeah. The double tight end, never advocate for that.
Never. That's a bad start
there. But I will say this, that you are going to see in these early best balls, you are going to see a ton of teams, because I have also done it myself, that have Justin Jefferson and George Kittle on. You are going to see a wide selection of teams that has a build where if they make it to the finals, you're going to see J-Jeff and Kittle, J-Jeff and Kittle, J-Jeff and Kittle. There he goes, Joe Burrow. I don't understand that build. If I'm going Josh out, I think Joe Burrow is a wasted pick there for sure. The Devonta Smith build, I like Devonta with Jamar. So in this QB, in this draft right here, what we'll probably do is we're not gonna. So I did one where I targeted. I had Josh Allen, and I was also building Minnesota. So I had Josh Allen, Jefferson, and then I had another wide receiver in there, and I targeted T.J. Hawkinson in these middle rounds.
It's interesting you said that. Hawk is a guy I just put on our board.
Yeah, I would consider that if,
I got him as our 7th right now.
If he's available in the 7th, I'd totally taking Hawk. I'm also open to Jonnu. I'm also open.
I think the Hawk here's my argument for the Hawk. It's now 2 years off the injury. Rookies like throwing to tight ends. I think he's just primed for a good start. And obviously he's not getting doubled. Not when J-Jeff's out there.
Joe, I will say this, and I know we're in the territory where this is going to be a different thing here. Travion Henderson and Ken Walker come up a lot.
Yeah, and they're going to come up again.
Rarely do I find them both on the same team, and I know you prioritize Travion Henderson higher than Ken Walker. But if it's an option and Ken Walker's still on the board at the 6'3",
if Walker's on the board, we'll do it. But I'm definitely taking Henderson on the turn.
Henderson at 5'10".
I'll take Walker here. I'll take Walker, but I'm definitely taking Henderson on the turn. I'm going to be a little upset if he's not there.
Well, that's what I was saying. I was saying you could take Travion first if you wanted to.
But no. Walker was the highest player on every board. So if these guys are autoing, I wasn't getting them.
Okay.
It wasn't going to happen.
I think we might get picked off on Travion on 11, but not from the 12 guy.
Yeah, well, hopefully he likes Monty or Connor more.
Yeah. Family's proud of you, Joe.
I'm so big on Henderson, though. I mean, I can't even state that.
But I'm big on. I think I'm a little bit bigger. I'm big on both Henderson and Ken Walker this year at price. I mean, we know Ken Walker's points per game could be absolutely elite.
Boom! He took Connor. That's a win. Judkins might even slide to us now, and if we can get Judkins and Hawk on the turns, would that be sweet?
You couldn't ask for a better turn. Look at that. Like
that is perfect for us.
This is a phenomenal start, I think, in terms of everything, the board working out the way that we need.
Board working out. I mean, I don't normally like this quarterback start, but we got it stacked already. We have Adams, and our first pick here was.
I mean, we essentially have a full.
So we're going to have the late stack with neighbors. And our super cheap guy, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, we basically have our full starting roster set up already. And
we don't have flex, but
minus the flex in the tight end, minus the flex in the tight end. You know, Hawkinson might be a little bit hard to get right now. Because I could see him going off in the 7th round to somebody in that middle pack there. Depending on
his ADP point is our pick at 7'10".
I'd love to get him. I'm
hoping Judkins falls, quite frankly.
His points per game could be elite. Can you still
I don't think Judkins will make it past 11. Hawk might be able to make it then.
Okay.
What's that?
You can still see me. I just have a different screen open. Can you still see me?
Oh, yeah, I can see you. You're looking sexy, Bob.
All right. So we're going to go here. I just want
extra work meetings ain't bringing you down.
Well, I hate work meetings, but everybody does. I don't think there's a person in the world that wakes up in the morning and says, "Yeah, I'd like to have a work meeting today."
Unless it's a sales meeting and you're a commission agent.
Yeah. So when we look at TJ Hawkinson last year, he was averaging 9.3 points per game. However, you're taking into account that he also missed 7 games. 5.7, 15.2, 3.3, 18.4, 5.8, 8.5, 10.2, 4.7, 11.8. So, you look at it and you say, well, that's not that great. But coming back from the injury, that's rough. In 2022, he was the 3rd highest.
Well, it's going to be better. Listen, the argument is it's going to be better.
And in 2023, he was tied for the 2nd highest average in points per game. So I like that. I like that a lot. Addison came up in my free league. So I sent likely mid to late first in 2027. I'm Win Nelson, no point waiting. I like Addison. If Addison, this is especially the thing. I haven't been building a lot of Addison with Jefferson builds because he comes at a price that I'm not willing to pay when my build is up. Because Jordan Addison and Jefferson are on wide ends of the spectrum in terms of value. Judkins almost made it back to us. But yeah, I love Addison. If I could trade likely, like you did, and a late first in 2027 to build him, that's solid, more than solid. Evans to get Evans. I like Evans a lot, but I do still like Cook a little bit. I mean, he still has that touchdown upside. He's not probably going to get as many as he had this year, but so this is Hawk.
So to me, Hawk is the pick here, and then it's probably Golden thereafter.
I'm okay with Golden. I'm okay with who else is out there?
I mean, It's right now Stephon Diggs,
Oh.
Ayuk, Ekuba,
Even if it was
Golden.
likely, I'd have been okay with it, to be honest with you, family. So just a mid to late first, that makes sense to me. That's worth it for a guy like Addison because he's capable right now of putting up 40 points. So if you're just joining us, we're building a build. We're going through
You
some
got to read
strategy
the
stuff.
questions. There's so many people who only listen to us. You got to remember that.
I did read it. It wasn't a question; it was a comment, and I put it up on the screen.
But
So
they're not reading it. You have to read it out loud.
If you're just joining us, we're going through and talking about different build strategies. We're starting with that a high-ranking quarterback first, or not in the first 4 rounds, and then building our team, knowing that we're going in and doing that. Right now, we're sitting here.
Travis Hunter went at 6'11".
Yeah, he's climbing, dude. He's climbing. I remember people making fun of us when we had him up there at like round 7, and he's climbing higher and higher and higher and higher. Joe, what's the running back market look like here? Family wants to know
it's dead. The cliff is over. Your top running back is Jaylen Warren.
All right, let's go wide receiver here. This is Golden.
This is Golden, yeah.
Okay.
And hopefully Warren slips back to us.
He has been.
But right now, our starting roster is full. We only have two. Our flex is a wide receiver. And actually, Bob, this is a conversation we had over the weekend that I think we should share.
Joe, hold on a minute.
You're building your DFS normally, the majority of times in a standard DFS lineup to maximize
we'll get to that
points, you do a running back as your flex. But when we're building teams in best balls, it doesn't always go that way by draft capital. So I know you had some thoughts about it. I want to tee you up so you can share it with the group.
Yeah. Before I do, though, I just want to comment on Family's wide receiver situation now. He's got Lamb, J. Jeff, and Addison as his starting 3 wide receivers in his league. And he's thinking about getting J.J. McCarthy to have Hawk, Jeff, and Addison. I don't think that's a bad idea at all. I think when we're thinking about the success of J.J. McCarthy, that it is going to come from triple stacks. So, stacking a 3-to-1 with J.J. McCarthy is not a bad idea. I mean, I would even consider that, if the Vikings are going to be successful, Mason's probably going to have some involvement as well as a goal line back, if that's his role, what it's going to be. So I think that if I own Hawk or if I own Jefferson and Addison, I'm absolutely going out there right now to getting JJ McCarthy. Going to the point that Joe was mentioning, when we talk about DFS versus best ball, and we talk about how we maintain different rosters, right? And we say, okay, in DFS, I want to put a running back in because of the volume. I want volume at the position, and I want good volume at the position. And usually you can find good enough volume. Sometimes you're going to put a wide receiver in that flex position in DFS, and it makes sense if that's a volume-based position, right? So what Joe was asking me over the weekend as we were talking, we were saying, well, why am I drafting 9 wide receivers, 8 wide receivers in best ball versus 5 or 6 running backs? And I explained to him that, my realization came when you're looking at the lineups and you're saying, okay, well, I can start up to 4 running back, or I can start up to 4 wide receivers, and I can only start up to 3 running backs. So when you look at it, I feel, in my personal opinion, and some in the fantasy football community share the same opinion, is that I want to at least have half of what I'm expected to start every week. So if I can potentially have 4 wide receivers starting, well, then I want to have at least 8 in the off chance that these points are coming in bunches. In terms of the running backs, most people are drafting 6 running backs because you can have upwards of 3 starting. Typically speaking, you're looking and you're saying, okay, well, what about tight ends? Well, people are drafting 2 to 3 of those because they can have up to 2 of them starting. Quarterbacks, similarly, people are only usually drafting 2 to 3 in these early best balls, 3, usually 2, because they can start at least half of them. So you want to have the ability to be flexible. And so when it comes down to this wide receiver or running back, I'm not thinking about it in these early best balls right now because, I don't know what the games are going to be every single week. When I am playing DFS, I know exactly who they're playing, when they're playing, and I do it and I say, okay, well, I want to play Rashid Shaheed because he's facing the defense that Rashid Shaheed can capitalize on. But here, we don't know when those games are going to come. So we want to kind of load up with volume at that position, because there are going to be weeks where wide receivers are going to go into your flex position. And you might say, well, why not tight ends? Well, you can just take a look at the averages of tight ends over the course of the last several years. And you say, okay, well, the highest tight end score, the top tight end might only average 14 points, but their floor is much lower because they're not used in certain situations. So, that's the reason why we say don't go after 2 tight ends early, because it also puts you in a hole when it comes to establishing what your 8 wide receivers are going to be. And you're more than likely going to be trotting out guys in any given year, like a Gabe Davis or, a Jalen Naylor or anything like that. And that's dangerous. You want to have in your wide receiver pool, you want to have wide receivers that are consistently capable of moving past that point of 18 plus points in a given week, especially in PPR. And you want to have running backs that can pretty much do plus 15 points a week in any given week. That will give you a really nice balanced team. I agree with you, family, and to your comment here that you have Stroud and Lamar, and it's a tier down. But I would say that if I don't have Nico, and Stroud could be a guy that would, if I can move the needle and put Stroud on the trading block and trade, get something good back for him, that I would consider going with the Lamar JJ McCarthy. I wouldn't be upset with that. But I also don't want to give up Stroud. If I had to, I could. But if I'm not holding on to Nico, if I'm not holding on to Christian Kirk or anything like that, in redrafts, it tends to be less important to have a stack, because what you have to think too is that if Minnesota fails, that's the thing. If Minnesota fails, you now have a low floor. If Minnesota succeeds, you have a high ceiling. So there is a cost-benefit analysis to fantasy like that. I think JJ as a QB3 is not a bad choice. If you have JJ as a QB3, and usually I don't want to roster 3 quarterbacks in redraft or in dynasty, but I can understand, particularly in dynasty leagues, where having those 3 quarterbacks will be credible. And JJ McCarthy is the type of guy to go with. If I had to move like Cousins and Tracy, I'd totally move Cousins and Tracy to get into JJ. Maybe not both at the same time. Maybe just Tracy and the pick, like Tracy in the 208. I would do that for JJ. JJ's young enough. So something like that, like a Cousins, Tracy, and a 208 would probably be right around the appropriate value for that. All right, Joe, who are we going with here in the 11th round?
If Goddard's still on the board, we're going to go with Goddard.
Goddard might get traded, but I'm okay with that.
Then we'll take Cal. I'm cool with Calicari too. I'm cool with both of them, actually.
We could take Goddard. It's no biggie. I think it's a good enough pick.
And then I want to go Coleman. I know that you're not on the Coleman bus, but I like the probability of him improving in a very high scoring offense. Some people just need the first go around the sun to be able to find out how this league works.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
He's also receiver number 6, so there's not a whole lot of risk.
We're in that dead zone of running backs. This is again normally where we take a quarterback, but we're not. So if you're tuning in and you're like, well, why didn't they take a quarterback
like a pretty strong build though, without knowing we're not taking quarterbacks.
You're absolutely building. It's a different style of build for anybody. Like, you're looking at pick 1 and 2, exactly the same thing as us. So, you're seeing that there's a lot of red, and the teams that already built.
This guy in the 11th spot has 4 quarterbacks.
Yes.
He has to be doing just to piss off number 12.
Yeah, because number 12 just took their first one. Yeah, absolutely. But they have a stack that they have a stack with Brian Thomas, and they have a stack with Tua, so it doesn't bother them. Doesn't bother them in the slightest. I would have liked Jaden Higgins there, to be honest with you.
Well, I can't pick someone who's gone before me.
I know that's just disappointing. I would have really liked that. That would have been nice. But yeah, I mean, all these guys right here have the potential to have similar outputs depending upon how the coaching staff kind of coaches them up. Like Rashad Bateman, I don't think Rashad Bateman's going to hit 11 touchdowns again. And his value in DraftKings is a little bit lower to me than maybe in Underdog because of the touchdowns. In Underdog, I could see him going like 10th round or 9th round because of the touchdowns. But in DraftKings, he just doesn't move the needle. He just doesn't move the needle. Joe, what running backs are up on the board? Family wants to know what running backs are up there.
So your running backs on the board at the moment: Ray Davis, Kareem Hunt, Wright, Harvey, Eckler, Devin Neal, Algier. A lot of, aside from Harvey, no one's really worth throwing the dart at.
This could be a 14th round.
I didn't have that at the top. Above that is Jalen Williams, Tootin, Spears, Ford, and Garendo.
Yeah, well, we're sitting here.
Garendo's who I'm lining myself up to take, by the way.
I'd be okay with Garendo. I'd also be okay if in the 14th round we took Algier.
I'd rather go Samson than Algier. He's a little bit lower.
That's fine.
I just like the rookie. I like the rookie running back.
What I'm really digging here, though, is some of the potential value that you could get in the tight end market, right? Where Dalton Kincaid in the 10th round, Colston Loveland in the 12th round. Colston Loveland could end up on the Jaguars and be fairly successful. Tyler Warren could end up on the Jaguars and be fairly successful.
See, I don't think that Loveland's going to be anywhere near Warren. I think Loveland's going to have a very similar rookie year.
Oh yeah,
to McBride, where he
this
did
area
nothing
like
rookie year.
Once you get past Scadaboo, it's super dead. But from Warren to Scadaboo, it's a veritable who's who of like who do you want to take a chance on?
Yeah, Caleb Johnson's my pick almost.
Do you take a chance on Scadaboo and Caleb because the rookies? Do you take a chance on Bayshul a little bit later and pass on Caleb and Scadaboo because you're going to take Bayshul later? Do you want to take one of the guys that's already established, like the Pollards, the Pachecos, the Stevensons, the Etiennes, the Swifts, even though they are more than likely going to lose their jobs in the upcoming year? Maybe Pollard and maybe not so much.
There goes Garendo. Not a fan of that.
So we're sitting here with 6 wide receivers, Joe.
Yeah, there's a couple of late ones I'm intrigued in. The receivers right now on the board are Keenan Allen, Pierce, Hopkins, Palmer, Coker.
Well, if we want, we could build. I'm seeing Bryce Young is still on the board. I know we were waiting till the 16th round. Maybe he slips.
No, I want to stick with this waiting till the 16th round. I like.
No. I'm saying I think he slips, but either Pierce, maybe that could be an option for us if you don't want to go running back here. Pierce can potentially get us into Anthony Richardson in the 16th round, maybe a little bit of rough.
We'll roll the dice on that. We'll take Pierce.
I mean, it's a dead zone for every player position right now. There's nothing.
It is, and we'll take Samson on the turn.
Yeah, I would even consider that maybe a Devin Neal Samson is also good for this position as well. In this,
would you be okay with a 2 quarterback and a 2 tight end build?
Well,
because it's not like we have bad ones. We got 2 good ones. We have
but we do have tight ends that get hurt. So I do want.
That's true. Yeah, we're gonna need a 3rd one for that purpose.
Like a Chig, I wouldn't be mad at. I wouldn't be mad at Chig or Noah Gray as a 3rd tight end. But family, like
you go Fryer move.
Like I don't even
pick, but see if he comes back to us at 15.
I honestly don't really even want to touch some of these running backs that are happening off the board. I did get J.K. Dobbins the other day.
That was Samson. That was the only one I wanted to touch.
So take Devin Neal here.
All right.
Take Devin Neal. We won't get him on the comeback.
No, we won't.
That's what I was saying. Like, if you didn't go Alec Pierce there, we could have double dipped on the running back. The only running backs that I really want to take right now in this 12th to like 14th round is the rookies. That's it.
Oh yeah, we're basically at only rookies in my opinion at this point. At running back, receiver maybe.
Oh yeah, Joe. How many quarterbacks does Team 11 and Team 12 have?
11 has 4, 12 has 3.
It ain't taking another one. They ain't taking another one.
6 has 3. Everyone else has 2.
We only have to really worry about, I believe, Team 4 because they only have 1.
I thought Team 4 had 2.
Uh,
Team 4 is 1. You're right.
Yeah, I think he's the only one we really have to. There goes Richardson.
There goes Richardson, which is fine.
That's fine. Pierce is a little bit of a waste there. Then I'd rather had Samson and Neal instead of Pierce, but that's okay. Pierce could hit. Pierce has shown that he can hit for 20 points. So, I mean, it's not terrible. Like the depth of our wide receiver position is basically just high upside. I mean, like not even high upside in the chance that, like, what'd you say?
It's best ball. It's what's supposed to be.
Yeah. I mean, but it's high upside, low volume. So Shaheed, Coleman, and Pierce are all low volume wide receivers. But when they hit,
that's because our 3 starters are massive volume in Neighbors, AJ Brown, and Adams.
Yeah. So family, Darnold has fluctuated depending on a lot of factors. If quarterbacks start getting taken really early, people will get scared and say, well, Darnold's the best one left. He's the only one left before the rookies and the Bryce Youngs and the Anthony Richardsons and the Genos. And Sam Darnold has put up, number 1 quarterback performances in the past. And so that's how people kind of are sitting on these guys. I also think that team 11 and 12, I think 11 and 12 took a bunch of quarterbacks thinking that they were kind of trying to screw us.
It could have been.
But
if they want to go and take Russell Wilson right now, I'll take Rodgers. I don't care.
Yeah. Another rook at the running back position, DJ Giddens could be in for a decent look, especially in the back half of the season. We mentioned
these rookie running backs are lottery picks, but I believe they're more likely to perform than Ray Davis or Dowdle. They're probably going to take their jobs. Just which rookie goes where.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good chance. I do also
Martinez in Kansas City is my dream.
Well, that would be something interesting. Even if Devin Neal went
there.
But
this has to be Russell Wilson. We honored it.
There you go,
the
family.
First 4, quarterback in the last 4.
It's there.
2 stacks. Stack our top 2 receivers with them, too.
That's a wild build. I mean, you ask yourself, Big Russ probably won't be the starter every week. I don't know, because J-Mo could be there too, but I think I like it. I think it's an interesting build. I really do.
Oh, it's certainly an interesting build. There is no doubt about that.
And like we always say, if Hurts goes down, I mean,
you're lost anyway.
You're cooked anyway. So when you lose a guy with 30-plus point potential on a good week in DraftKings, with the bonuses and stuff, yeah, you're like, whatever, it's all right. But I do think, while I had a little vendetta for Hurts this past year, I do think that when we talk about draft value, that if you are wanting to build, and again, if you do want to build and you're sitting at the bottom half of the board and you do want to build a strong quarterback, that you don't want to reach on Allen in the 2nd round. You want to pick either Lamar or Hurts in the 3rd or 4th round. And family, I agree with you. The Alec Pierce pick was a hedge on if Anthony Richardson would be available in the 16th round. That's it. Low volume, could give you a high score. Like we said, I'd rather had Samson there. But again, when we took Giddens, there's not really any great wide receiver options there as well. And just losing out on Samson, I think it's okay enough.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's not really that big.
I mean, I agree with you. He's just totally meh. It's a weird position to be in. If you get Richardson with Pierce, and if Richardson were to start the whole season, which he might not, there's a little bit of and some interesting kind of way to view it there.
Yeah, there's only one starting quarterback left on the board.
I'm really curious if the Allen guy ended up getting going Shakir, because I didn't pay attention to that there. So there goes Chig. That's a little bit of a disappointment. Well, we could hedge the Goater.
I think I'm taking Calicera at the end because then it's a hedge against injury and trade.
Yeah, I think that's not terrible.
Yeah.
We have a double stack there with Hurts. That's fine.
Yeah.
I would have liked Mike Williams.
I'm thinking the Mario Douglas or Martinez here. So the Mario Douglas, I think, is a fine ad here.
Yeah, because Martinez just got taken.
Yeah. Unless there's a running back I like.
If Mike Williams
check that. I'm thinking Ollie Gordon. I'm not risking Ollie Gordon not coming back to me. We're light on running backs.
No, we're not. You have 6.
Yeah, but I got 7 receivers. Now I got 6. I had 7 receivers and a brick wall in my starting lineup. I don't really think that the Mario Douglas is breaking it.
Pop could pop. You never know. He could.
Bob, I hate the fact that you just said that sentence.
Let's take a look, right? Let's take a look if Douglas could get into the starting lineup.
Well, he didn't make it back to us. We got 3 picks left, and I got 3 guys I want. So this kind of did its own math.
Yeah, I'm higher than some on Mike Williams this year. I think going back to Herbert could be good. I think it dings Quentin Johnston a little bit. I do like the prospects of Mike Williams returning to a role, particularly in the red zone. I think it could also be a potential ding on I like Westbrook-Ikhine there. I think it could be a potential ding on Najee's touchdown upside as well, because they do like to run when they get towards the red zone because they didn't have any really good high assets other than Ladd as well. But I think when you put Mike Williams and his body in the red zone, it opens the door to potentially a good role for Mike Williams, even if his speed has slowed down due to injury. I think that he could easily take over a role because they don't have a relevant tight end, like the Disleys and the Stone Smarts. I think he could potentially have a role in the red zone and put together a couple decent games here and there. Not anything crazy, but a couple good games here and there. What's with Ollie Gordon?
Hey, guys, if you haven't already, make sure you click like and subscribe. Always helps the channel.
What's with Ollie Gordon that you like so much?
What's with Ollie Gordon?
Yeah, why do you like him?
Last running back who doesn't totally suck.
Last running back who doesn't.
He's got a little bit of speed. He's got a little balance.
Little balance, little speed.
Yes. He's a 4th round guy. He could be complete special teams only, doesn't really get anything happen, but he's also your 6th one. He is our 6th one because we're only taking 2 quarterbacks. We're going to be doing a 2-6-9-3 build.
So this is the other benefit, family. We often talk about, you mentioned that our picks are pure luxury from a point forward. And you're absolutely right. So we have talked, ad nauseum about the late tight ends going late tight ends. You see team 2 and team 5 building some late tight ends there. If you don't do that and you already have a tight end set, there is credence to having a tight end set and kind of just baking in some other roster positions, depending on how you've built your roster. And we'll take a look at all the rosters when we're done with the draft to see how everything.
The thing I like about this, family, if I'm going to break down the way we did our team here, at no point did it ever feel like we were in a 1-0 run.
No.
And we were getting screwed over because of it. We weren't in that quarterback blog. We weren't in a tight end run. And I think that just by missing the runs or being ahead of them, you always come out with a stronger feeling draft.
Yeah.
And that was the one thing that this build definitely gave us.
Family, as a note to your comment here about Joe and me getting sick of one another, Joe and I have known each other since high school. We started hanging out more in college and after college a lot. And we graduated college in the early 2000s. Okay. It's still early-ish 2000s, right? So,
technically,
we've known each other for quite some time, and we've played bar trivia. And there have been days where Joe got to bar trivia at 5, and the trivia game didn't
I've gotten there at 4 before, dude. There was so it was always on Wednesdays. And there was a day that King Felix was pitching a perfect game, and I watched from the 4th inning on, and that was sort of 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Eastern.
And so there was a day where he got there. It was, I think, at like 4:00, and there was multiple days. And I got out of work at like 3:30, or I got out of work at like 5:30. And he goes, "All right, I'll just wait for you." And we would just go through happy hour. Trivia would start at 8. Our other friends would come, and we'd be there until like 11:00. So
Yeah, that was Wednesdays.
We don't run out of things to talk about. So,
there's always something to bitch about.
We do appreciate all the comments, but we do often, there was a day too, family, when we were watching March Madness. Joe's like, I'm going to the local bar, and I'm going to get there at Dante Thornton. That's one of our chatters guys. You look at it and you say, okay, we were at March Madness, and Joe's like, I'm getting there at noon. And I was like, dude, I can't get there till like 4:35. And he goes, that's fine. And so he was there from 12 to like
I still 4. Do that. The first weekend of March Madness, normally now it's the Friday. I take that day off and I start at noon.
Yeah. So I will say this, family, with the potential domestic that Hill might be hit with here, there is a reason for me to put more Malik Washington back on my board. So the narrative that we could write for ourselves is that Nick Westbrook-Ikhine would absolutely take over a more prominent role if Hill were to miss time. But knowing how prolific Tua can be as a passer, I wouldn't write off Malik Washington right now. I do agree with you that Westbrook's arrival does make him worthless in that capacity, but Hill's stupidity and law breaking always is problematic. So
it's also the 19th round. You said a couple rounds ago, family, that these were all luxuries anyway.
I would be more willing to throw more darts at Malik Washington than Luke McCaffrey. I'd be willing to throw more darts at Malik Washington than Christian Watson, knowing Christian Watson's injury history. I don't know why you take Noah Brown. I don't really see with Noah Brown, Luke McCaffrey, Debo, potentially them taking another running back with Austin Eckler plus Terry McLaurin. I don't see why that's a thing. But yeah, I think that there's a big reason to take. I think there's more of a reason to take Malik Washington than some of those other guys on the table. So let's go back up to the top and let's take a look at.
I really think I like this team.
Hey, it's a strong team.
So the roster is Jalen Hurts, Kenneth Walker III, Henderson, Neighbors, AJ Brown, Devontae Adams, The Hawk, Golden, Shaheed, Mason, Goddard, Coleman, Pierce, Devin Neal, Giddens, Russell Wilson, Ollie Gordon, Ikhine, Calacara, and Thornton Jr.
So I will say this. The only area that I think that we're really thin on before we talk about other teams is the running back position. Even though we have 6 running back positions, I think that when we look at Ken Walker, like if he has his health together, we have a top 7 running back in the 6th round. And I said that to you guys last year.
I also think there's a chance Mason ends up being a top 10 running back.
Wasn't getting enough
big on Mason
volume plus the injury. I really like it that we didn't take Ashton Genty in the 2nd round because it opened the way to a better build. Because like I said, reading the room is really important, and knowing that Josh Allen is slipping and noticing that soon after Josh Allen gets picked, Lamar Jackson goes, is really important to be aware of when you're in these rooms, these $10 rooms on DraftKings and even on Underdog. It's important to be aware of where these quarterbacks are getting going. And you're right, family. When you start running back in the 5th round, it's going to look a little weak. And like I said, it's thin, but I think it's fine. I think it's absolutely electric because we have what could potentially be 2 running backs in the 5th and 6th round that have the capability of scoring 20 plus points in a given week.
That's
you
right.
Look at the other running backs in this round, you're going to have a hard conversation to kind of, the only thing dogging Ken Walker is, primarily the presence of Charbonnet, but mostly that the offensive line was trash and led to him getting hurt a lot. And so
Mm-hmm.
That's the only problem here. But we have enough depth in terms of rookies that if he does get injured along the way, we can build on that. And when you do this, you can't be scared. We're not going to, I didn't want to push, we don't want to push Tracy or Pollard or Warren or Brian Robinson in this lineup, because if Ken Walker does get hurt and they lost their job, we have just used 2 picks that are really important. So if you're taking Ken Walker, and this is something that I just want to share with everybody. If you're taking Ken Walker as your first or second running back, if you're taking him as your second running back, I don't really see a need to take another running back until after kind of this mess and just take a rookie. But if he's your first running back, you do kind of want to do the 5-6 running back turn, taking 2 running backs there, and then just kind of avoiding the position until you get to the Devin Neals and Sampsons. And if you want to take Caleb Johnson, that's fine too, and fill out the rest of your roster. But what I want to kind of just talk about here, because we talked a little bit about this on last week, is the tight end positioning, right? People were asking about what to do about tight ends and where these tight ends are going. So going up on the board there, obviously you have Brock Bowers. If you want Brock, you're gonna have to have a pick from 1-9 to 2-6 to have a chance at Brock, or else you're going to have to bring him up. And I don't advise, if you're sitting in the top 7, bringing up Brock Bowers, because you can look at his stats last year and he had some tremendous games, and you're saying, well, he's on an offense where he's basically the only piece there. Well, please don't forget about Jacoby Myers. He is a relevant wide receiver. Yeah, he's not as big as a threat as Brock Bowers, but keep that in mind. If Brock Bowers is sitting at, and I just want to bring this up here too, Joe, when we look at last year's weekly fantasy numbers and we take a look at tight ends, and we're omitting week 18, by the way. We're not including week 18. When we look at week 17, just from week 1 to week 17 in 2024, Brock Bowers was averaging around 14, 15 points a week. So he's at 15.5 when you take out week 18. So he absolutely is a guy that you can target, but I just want to bring that to your attention because he wasn't the top average tight end producer. That belonged to George Kittle. And Trey McBride was at 15.4. So when you look at it and you say, is there a necessity to take Brock Bowers that high? Not really. But if you are taking Brock Bowers that high, you are opening your team up to potentially taking, like this drafter did, a quarterback in the 4th round instead of a George Kittle, or a wide receiver in the 4th round. And to be honest with you, if I could go Nico, Brock, DJ Moore, Mike Evans, I'm really not that mad. I think that that's a good build, and then building your running backs out from that. But what you can't do when you have Brock, I think is you asked earlier, family, about do I take to, like, how do I approach these onesies, and do I build an early quarterback and an early tight end? No, because if you do, you're really going to handcuff yourself in a not a great way, and you're going to be weak at a couple different positions. So just taking a look at Team 11 for a moment, and I'm just going to ignore the fact that they have 4 quarterbacks, and I'm just going to look at the first 6 picks. You got Nico, DJ Moore, and Debo, which isn't terrible. Debo's not the best wide receiver that I want as my wide receiver 3, but having Jane Daniels, that makes sense. And then he took a running back in round 6, which is the James Conner. Okay, that's fine. Number 4, team number 4, I think team number 4 is such a standard build right now that it's hard not to love team 4, right? You look at it and you say, I have 2 absolutely stellar 20-point plus upside backs as my first 2 picks. Perfect. If I'm doing that, and we'll take a look at team 4 in a moment about that, absolutely you're building 3 wide receivers next and ignoring the tight end position. And they built a quarterback in the 6th round. Was that Baker that they built in the 6th round, by the way? Can you scroll down to see?
It has to be.
Yeah. And then look what they did. And this is why I like this build a lot. Keep scrolling, Joe. They didn't take another running back. Keep scrolling. Until round 10.
Till 10.
Which is the what you should do. If you are going to invest in 2 20-plus point upside running backs in the first 2 rounds, there is absolutely no reason. Now, I wouldn't have taken Charbonnet in the 10th.
See, I argue that. I think you should get the 3rd because of the volatility of the position and the injury risk of the position.
I think that's
no my argument for getting a 3rd.
Well, the reason why I say that, though, is that when I'm making my team here, I'm trying my best to not bake in injuries. I am going that if my team is healthy all year,
I love running backs and flex.
It's going to be that profitable. Now, go back up, because I think, family, you're absolutely right. You love team 4. I think it makes a lot of sense. Why that makes a lot of sense to me, because that first 5 picks is so standard and it's easy to love. It's really easy to love. Then you take another look at a pretty standard setup where you have wide receiver, running back, wide receiver, running back. Now, I don't really love this build. I think this team is good, but I don't really love the build because if you're planning on building your 2 running backs early anyway, I want to build the best that I can. And I think that when all things said and done, if you're doing this 2 running back build early, I'm absolutely not prioritizing Marvin Harrison Jr. or Zay Flowers in a PPR league. Like looking at team 7, Puka lead. Love that. I've taken him as early as I've taken him as early as 3, to be honest with you, in drafts that I've done. Achane usually doesn't drop. Great pick right there. But once you get there and you're looking at that 3-7 hole, what I see the correlation between Puka and Marvin Harrison, that makes sense to me a lot. But I think when you look at production, right? If you were to go, say, Derrick Henry and Achane and then go hammer the running backs or hammer the wide receivers and do Marv, Zay, and DK rather than Najee, I'm not really sure where if you're going to take the early running backs like that, go in and just do it like team 4 did rather than kind of mess around with Zay and an unstacked Marv and unstacked Zay. Did that guy stack Puka at all with Stafford, Joe? So he got Kyler, which was good for him. So he did stack.
Looking to find Stafford went at 8.
Okay.
Stafford went 12-5, so the 8th picker.
He stacked Marv with Kyler, which, when Marv is having his best, or when Kyler's having his best week, it's usually through rushing touchdowns. So, and Marv was getting less targets than Trey McBride. Maybe that changes this year. Go ahead up, Joe. I would rather stack Kyler with McBride, to be honest with you. Go up so we can see a couple of these other teams and looking at some standard builds here. Then you have the Jahmyr Gibbs owner. But this also says, looking at team 7, if they would have just went Puka, Ladd, Marv, Zay, and then go and get 2 running backs, I think that team would have been in a better position. I think that it's almost, if you're planning on taking a running back in that 6th round, and there's plenty of running backs there to work with, I don't think you need to prioritize a running back in the 2nd round. How do you feel about that, Joe?
So we disagree about the amount of running backs you should have.
No, I'm not disagreeing about the amount. I think you should have a good amount.
Well, I think you should have 3 spots. Specifically talking about top-notch talent, I think you should have 3 studs. And the reason for that is I think there are 2 holes where people think there's quality. We've talked about the 2nd and 3rd round gap of holes, where I think Kyron's a bust, Brown's going to be a bust, and Mixon are going to be a bust. But after you get exit spots for the next 4 rounds, I mean, it is Mason, and it is Johnson. That's it. So I'm not comfortable with Stevenson, Etienne, Swift,
But I'm with you on
Scadaboo,
that.
Robinson, none of them, not even
I'm
Warren.
with you on that. But
So
I'm talking
because
about
of that limited amount, I want to have 3 studs. Now, granted, Mason is our third. I'm feeling a little vulnerable on that, but I love how stacked our receiving and quarterback rooms are. So it's a cost of doing business.
So go up. That's kind of what I'm saying. So go up to the top half of this board again. That's really what I'm saying. And family hits it a little bit here when he mentioned Team 4 getting Hampton over Flowers, and he would look way better. You look at it, you see, or Team 7 getting Hampton instead of Flowers would have been fine. Yeah. So like looking at that team specifically, Team 7, let's say their build is the same, but instead of Flowers, they take Hampton. Okay. And then they play around and they say, okay, well, maybe I don't want Najee there. I want DK, and then coming back and getting Monty. DK to Flowers is not huge drop off, in my opinion, in terms of what the potential numbers could be. Omarion on that team with HN could be great. But listen to this team, Joe, is that if you go Puka, Ladd, Marv, Hampton, Najee, would you not be comfortable with a team like that and not go HN? Like, who do you feel more comfortable? Like that's kind of the thing that I'm getting at, is that
if you take A-Chain off that roster and his starting running back is Najee, I'm feeling incredibly vulnerable, and it's a dead team. Because Najee, while probably
if it's Omarion and Najee, if you do the build,
Najee, I'm okay with. Najee's like Najee's gonna slip when it's all said and done. A lot of the rookies are gonna jump over him. I think you're overpaying for Najee in the 5th.
Joe, what if it was Omarion, Najee, or what if it was Omarion, Ken Walker, and Judkins? You'd be okay with that. But that's what I'm saying. It's like that build.
To me, it's not about the Keller. It's not about the running back. It's about who it is. And I think so many people are drafting right now based upon the Keller. I just need to have the green in there. I need to have the yellow.
The color is what guides people a lot of times. But this is what I'm saying, is that when I look at certain teams and I look at the builds and look we went after, we see a couple hero running backs working out. We see a lot of early running backs, but we're seeing what you're saying. Looking at this draft board, for anybody watching right now, we're seeing what you're saying is that in these early best ball drafts, people are getting scared. They do not want to miss out on a potential top 20 finisher because, to be honest with you, not many people see a top 20 finisher past David Montgomery, right? Is that many people are not seeing a running back after David Montgomery that is not a rookie that will be a top 20 finisher.
Well, that's not a rookie is the key clause there, because the rookies will dominate after there.
So you're looking at it, and out of all these players, right? Everybody here knows that I love Bucky, Bijan, JT, Jacobs, HN. I'll take a veritable smattering of that, but I also want to just point out that what you said about the running backs, I think is also true about these wide receivers as well. And I think that we're forgetting a lot as well.
I don't agree with the receiver part, because I think the receivers are so much more stacked.
Like, I like Waddle, but Waddle doesn't have weekly 20-point upside. I like Sutton, but there's a story I can write where he doesn't have 20-point upside. And so, when I look at it and I say, all right, if we didn't build Jalen Hurts there, okay, and we would have had Neighbors, A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams, Omarion Hampton, Ken Walker, and Travion Henderson, we would have been
swooning. Actually, to be totally honest, but if we did not commit to taking Hurts before this started, or
you would have wanted Gen,
we would have taken Genti too.
Yeah, and that's fine. But then we would have hammered some wide receivers, and you would have taken.
So this is really what the difference of this build would have been. Is instead of having Hurts and Brown, we would have had Genti and Rice. And overall, I think that's a much weaker team. I think that this was a stronger team because in almost every situation, we took the end before a massive teardrop. And that's what Hurts is. He's the last before a massive teardrop. We look at our running back room, the last before a teardrop. So I think that anytime you build a team like that, you get a massive advantage, and that might be something worth looking into. Now, granted, I still only think there's 3 elite quarterbacks out there for fantasy football, being Allen, Jackson, and Hurts. I think Daniels is prone for a setback, and Burrow's not repeating what he did last year. He's not Peyton Manning. So when I look at that, might be fighting words, to be honest. But when I look at that, I really think it's just those 3. And on a side note for those drafting, the worst draft pick in this thing actually is Burrow. And the reason isn't because of Burrow himself. It's because he's before the guy on the turn. He took Lamar Jackson the last time. You know he's not taking another quarterback. If you wanted Devontae or Mixon, you blew it. You blew it.
Well, the damage here, and I do, before we go, I do want to look, I do want to look at team 2 because I just want to bring this up is that, like I said last week, a lot of people are running naked Josh Allen or Josh Allen with a low end stack. And I really do think that because Shakir hasn't been a threat for touchdowns this past year, is that there is a conversation to be noted that it's very, you're scared of taking Shakir at the draft capital that Shakir is costing. But I will say this. There are going to be, and I don't think he took Shakir. Shakir went 7-7. So
no, he got Kincaid.
He got Kincaid, which is good enough. And I think if he would have got Josh Palmer, that would have been fine. But here's the thing. When you go after and you're taking Josh Allen, even if you're building a Higgins team, like the other day, for example, I ended up being able to build J. Jeff, Higgins, Josh Allen. And then in the 4th round, I think I took Kittle and then something else. But when I look at it, hey, Bones, how's it going? But when I look at it and I say, Allen teams with Higgins, I think are going to be plentiful enough when we get into the playoffs. I think that a Higgins with a Josh Allen is going to be good. Plus a stacked Shakir. I would be stacking Shakir in this lineup. Like, I know Jayden Reed. I know people know that I love Jayden Reed. But I would rather, if I built Josh Allen, I'm building Shakir. And usually I'm not taking Shakir anywhere else, but I'm building Shakir if I've built Josh Allen. If I have...
I disagree with that. I think Shakir's just definitely disagree with that on half PPR.
He's a dude, but on DraftKings.
You know, I understand what you're saying about the bonus points, but my counter argument is,
let me say why I'm saying
was hurt last year, and Coleman's going to step up. Shakir might be the easiest jumpable number 1 receiver in football.
Here's what I'm saying: is that it's not because I like Shakir. It's because I think that the stack is not being built enough, because there is so many people in the fantasy football community that are pushing the same narrative that you said. So you are actually getting a competitive advantage by taking Shakir, by taking Kincaid, and by taking Palmer late that you aren't getting, because there are plenty of people, like Bones mentioned here, that naked Josh Allen. They're just rolling naked because
it's a family point. I want to put this thing out here. Shakir is nothing like Edelman. They're little dudes, I'll give you that. But in terms of their production, it's not going to work. And I want to also hit on this one, family. You mentioned that every Bengals game is going to be 50-49. Well, that's if you think the Bengals are going to win. I do not. I think the state of Ohio is not getting to 10 wins combined. So that's part of my anti-Burrow effect.
Yeah, but there is so many. I mean, there is, like you just saw, if you didn't see the whole episode, you can watch it. There is so much to say that, we've been sharing strategies for late QBs. We've been sharing strategies for mid QBs. We've been waiting, but there is a realm that if you took the jump that and built and played the board right, you can absolutely build an elite level team with one of these elite caliber quarterbacks and it work out really well. And I do think, you know, when it comes to these quarterbacks, final thought on these quarterbacks though, is that you're seeing a lot of this round 6 through 8 in these early best balls now is where we're getting the Bakers, the Mahomes, the Goff, the Knicks, Caleb Williams, Kylers, and Purdy. And it's pretty much set in stone that those guys are pretty much going to be anywhere from round 6 through round 10, early round 10. And I think that when we look at what their potential production is versus the potential production of Hurts, Allen, Burrow, and Lamar and Daniels, is that you have a group of guys here that need a certain script to happen to be super successful, right, Joe? Mm-hmm. Is that if I'm building Brock Purdy, I love what Team 3 did. They built out Pearsall and Jennings and Kittle. That's a lot of draft capital. But if Purdy's on and Purdy's not hurt, there is a framework where at least 2 of those guys are going to hit. Maybe I take off one of those wide receivers and maybe I only go Kittle. Maybe I only go Kittle and Pearsall, or I go Kittle and Jennings for volume, and then take, you know, Judy or Calvin Ridley there. And that's fine. I think that that's smart. The Baker Mayfield guy with Chris Godwin, we've done that before. I feel comfortable rolling out Baker with a Mike Evans and Godwin as well, or Baker with Bucky and Godwin. I think that that's a good combo. You have Mahomes with Worthy. That can be elite. You have Murray with Marv. Goff, did he take Amon-Ra? I'm pretty sure he did. He took Laporta. I'd rather.
There's some people did some decent stacking in this one, and that's.
I'd rather. Here's the thing. Final thought here about a guy like Goff is, I'm less inclined to stack Goff with Amon-Ra, and I am more inclined to stack Goff with JMO, because I think that when JMO hits, he's hitting with big, long touchdowns. Mm-hmm. When Amon-Ra hits, it's with volume. And volume doesn't necessarily help Jared Goff. And when Laporta hits, it's with touchdowns as well. So and maybe we can try this at another time. If I'm building Goff, I'm absolutely building him with Laporta or JMO or one of the 2, and I'm avoiding the stack with Amon-Ra. I know it sounds kind of counterproductive there, but it's the same reason why I go Caleb with DJ Moore and not with Rome. Similar kind of circumstances there because of the volume and whatnot. But I think we built a good team, and this board
built a very good team, Bob.
The room was good. I mean, minus the 4 QB guy and the 3 QB guy trying to screw us over, but they didn't, because we had a plan. It's always good to go in with a plan.
We had a plan.
All right, guys. So we'll join you guys on Wednesday, 3:45 Eastern Standard Time. If you missed this episode, go back and watch it. Like, subscribe, leave some comments in the chat. Let us know what's happening in your leagues as well. We'll be with you again Wednesday, 3:45 Eastern.